not gonna lie, our Club World Cup final predictions were pretty down bad. But before you call us frauds in the comment section, none of you expected Paris Saint-Germain, a team that has without so much as a misstep dominated every traditional European giant this year, to get absolutely embarrassed by Chelsea 3-0. Usually I do these episodes with Swapno, but today I'm just going to do a quick, unedited, instant match reaction by myself. I'll cover what the hell just happened and give you all 5 takeaways from this match, so if you enjoy the video and you want to see more solo reactions from me, please drop a like and sub to our channel below. Thank you, and let's get right into it. So I would say there's ultimately 2 key factors, tactically speaking, that allowed Chelsea to break down PSG's defense. The first one is their typical offensive structure. They played a 3-1-6 or a 4-1-5, as they usually do, as they have done throughout the Club World Cup, with Malo Gusto from the fullback position pushing upwards and playing together with the 4 attackers, and with this offense being held together with the anchor in that midfield in Moises Caicedo. This is typically not a very sustainable line of attack, because when you have so many players pushing forward, as soon as the ball gets broken, it's super easy for a team, especially like PSG, to counterattack. But because Moises Caicedo has been so solid, not just in this game, but honestly through this entire season, Chelsea are somehow able to pull this off. We saw this as a very, very different style of attack compared to, for example, how Real Madrid played against PSG. If you notice all of Real Madrid's offensive movements against PSG, there's maybe 3, maximum 4 players on the offense at once. And essentially, this allows PSG to have their 4-man defense, maybe have 1 or 2 midfielders, João Neves, Vitinha, whoever it is, to just play a little bit of help defense, and it makes it at least a lot easier to contain the offense. But in this game, PSG were really stuck in no man's land. Something very interesting about their midfield, the 3-man midfield, is there isn't really a defined number 8 in the team. I would describe it more as having 3 6.5s. And while this is actually a very interesting and effective style that Luis Enrique pulls off, I kind of saw a weakness of that in the way that they defend against Chelsea. Just for an example, look at the average positioning of the PSG starting 11 in this match. You'll notice that Ousmane Dembele's average positioning is virtually identical with all 3 of the players in PSG's midfield trio. They were just unable to really push back, add more cover to the defense, and it made it so much easier for Chelsea to just overwhelm. Case in point, in that 3rd goal that João Pedro scores, Vitinha is absolutely caught in no man's land, and that allows him to make that overlapping run. And in many of the chances that Chelsea get in general, whether or not they're goals, you'll notice that there's just no help that the PSG backline is getting. They have to figure it out all on their own. And they're a very, very solid, back 4, and that prevents Chelsea from getting more opportunities than they did. But it's just not the right tactical setup. You'll also notice that Chelsea were very, very smart with how they defended the PSG offenses. The PSG attacks, rather. Every time PSG were on the offense, they would play a very, either do a quick counterattack, which Chelsea's tight structure prevented PSG from being able to exploit too much, or they would play a narrow zone structure. Instead of playing man-to-man like many of the other elite teams have done against PSG, which makes it easy for Nuno Mendes and Hakimi to make overlapping runs and overwhelm the defense, Chelsea's just stuck to the zone, played super narrow, and I think because of that, Nuno Mendes and especially Achraf Hakimi, 2 players that have been pivotal to PSG's offense this season, were basically unable to do much of anything at all. And the other benefit that Chelsea gets from doing this is that by having all of their players positioned close together, and by forcing PSG to push up their fullbacks, push up their midfielders, and essentially show all their cards every time they had the offense, if Chelsea were ever able to break away just for a second on a counterattack, PSG's fullbacks are immediately neutralized. And now Beraldo and Marquinhos have to somehow try to defend the Chelsea onslaught, the fast players, the Malo Gustos, the Cole Palmers, etc., that they had to offer, and that was just way too much of a task for PSG to handle. Now, to be fair, even though I would say that Chelsea easily outclassed PSG throughout this match, it wasn't like PSG's 4-0 win against Real Madrid, for example, where PSG gets all the chances, Real Madrid gets absolutely nothing, and it's a tactical, just full-on disaster. To be fair to PSG, they do actually get quite a few decent chances in this game, and if anything, I think the 3-0 scoreline is a little bit unfortunate for them. It's not like they were absolutely destroyed. There were a couple very good opportunities that PSG had. For example, Doué gets an opportunity in the box 1-1 with the keeper. He tries to make an extra pass for no reason that Cucurella reads when he could have easily just shot it. João Neves gets a really good header in that is saved very well by Robert Sánchez. It looked like it was going to be a goal. And same thing later in the match with Dembele's point-blank chance, which is saved by Robert Sánchez once again. Robert Sánchez came up clutch in multiple parts of this match with 6 saves, and PSG easily right there could have had at least 2 goals. And if that was the position they were in early on to the second half, who knows what happens from that point, right? And also, I do want to say, Chelsea do get a little bit fortunate with some of the opportunities they get. For example, one of the goals is just completely fluffed by the PSG defender, and Malo Gusto just gets a free run at net. He does take it very well, I would say, lays it off to Cole Palmer, and Cole Palmer is just absolutely brilliant in his finishing, 2 goals and 1 assist in this match. And he's shown that even though I think there were definitely points, especially later in the season, where he was somewhat inconsistent, didn't look his best, was missing opportunities, he is Cole Palmer at the end of the day. Like, every time you need to see him step up in a final, in a crucial cup match, he always seems to do it. Euro 2024, Conference League Final 2025, and now here in the Club World Cup, this man is clutch. And that being said, it's going to bring me to my first key takeaway for this game. Chelsea have found their striker. I had doubts when João Pedro signed for Chelsea from Brighton as somewhat of a false 9, not the true goal scorer that I think Chelsea needed to replace Nicholas Jackson, who I'm just going to be honest with, I don't rate very highly. He scored only 10 goals in the Prem last season, and while I don't think that's because he's a bad player or anything, I think that's more so because he likes to make overlapping runs, he contributes to the attack, and he's not a shoot-first striker, which I didn't think was the type of player that Chelsea needed. Now, he has scored 3 goals so far in his 2 games starting for Chelsea, and he's scored 3 goals from 4 attempts. That is extremely clinical, but let's be honest, it's not sustainable, no matter how good of a striker that you are. Now, I think the main benefit that João Pedro brings to this team, and the reason why I'm still willing to say that he is the answer to this issue that Chelsea have had, despite the fact I don't consider his goal scoring to be sustainable, is because he is able to make those overlapping runs. In Cole Palmer's second goal, because of an overlapping run by João Pedro, he finds the separation and through his class gets an excellent finish. And then a similar thing, João Pedro is very intelligent. He finds that Vitinha is sleeping on him. He finds that Marquinhos is a half step behind him, and if he just runs, Cole Palmer will find him, and the PSG defense won't be able to react in time, and that's what causes his goal in this game. Now, he isn't the shoot-first poacher that someone like a Liam Delap or a Nicholas Jackson is, but I don't think that's necessarily what Chelsea need. I think Nicholas Jackson, as the perennial striker for Chelsea in the Premier League this season, really brought the team down, if anything. It forced, for example, Noni Madueke, Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto, whoever it was, to play not only as a playmaker or a winger or whatever, but also as a striker. It forced Cole Palmer to take a lot of long-range opportunities. It forced Noni Madueke to take a lot of long-range opportunities that they shouldn't have had to do. And with someone like this, even if they're not a shoot-first striker, just being able to make that run, free up space for whoever it is, make it easier, reduce the burden on Cole Palmer, on Pedro Neto, etc., to make an offensive play, that's going to be a massive benefit to Chelsea. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying João Pedro is the guy. Obviously, that is still Cole Palmer. But if you're going to give him the freedom to be a playmaker, as I think João Pedro can do, that is going to be a massive benefit in Cole Palmer. I mean, like, clearly this was Cole Palmer's best game of the tournament, and you can't, and let's not pretend ourselves, the reason he was so good was because João Pedro allowed him to. Chelsea also have found their backup striker, in my opinion. Liam Delap played for Ipswich this season in the Premier League, and, you know, as I've said throughout this channel, throughout our episodes covering the Prem, I don't think he is consistent enough to be a starting striker on a contending Premier League team, which I thought he would have been before João Pedro was signed. It seemed like for a bit that he was the striker, the solution for Chelsea, which he clearly isn't good enough to be, because despite his physical presence, despite his technical ability to create chances, again, he's not good enough at converting them, at least consistently and in the big moments. He gets a clear 1-1 opportunity with Donnarumma, which, to be fair, he creates for himself. It's an amazing play to get to that chance, but he completely scuffs it. And then earlier, he gets a shot from outside the box, and it's a very good save by Donnarumma, to be fair, but I think it does show that he's not exactly the kind of striker that we need, that Chelsea needs right now to score goals for them right now. He kind of reminds me of like a Benjamin Sesko, for example, who, while I rate as a potential future option for a very good Premier League team, I don't think he should be the starter for a contending Premier League team right now. Because while he has the physicality for the Prem, just like Liam Delap does, I don't think he has the consistency and the scoring ability yet. And while João Pedro isn't just a score-first type of player, as long as he is able to free up space for those other key star players that Chelsea has on that team, that is a massive, massive benefit that Chelsea are going to have going forward. And that leads me to my second takeaway. Chelsea has just had a massive stock up from this Club World Cup. I've already seen plenty of people suggest that Chelsea are now in for a title run, they've fixed all of their internal issues, and that they might win the English Premier League next season. And I'm not going to go that far yet, but I know I have been hating on Chelsea all of last season in the Premier League, saying how they were not going to be able to finish in the Champions League, and they proved me wrong. And I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to just state for the record right now that I think Chelsea can comfortably finish in the top 4 in the Premier League, and will be returning to the Champions League for the second straight year after this one, whether or not England gets a 5th spot. Now, obviously, I don't think Chelsea are on the level of the quote-unquote big 3 in England so far. You have Arsenal, who is a perennial second placer. It's a bit of a meme for them, but I mean, they still have a very solid squad, and they're strengthening it even more with Victor Gyökeres, which is going to solve the striker system that they have themselves, the striker issue that they have themselves, rather. And it's also going to, they're also potentially going to sign Noni Madueke, which could potentially free up playing time for Saka, making him less prone to injury, and making sure that Arsenal have less of an injury crisis that they had this season. And then so this is like even more evident for Liverpool and Man City, right? Liverpool literally just broke the British transfer record in signing Florian Wirtz. They've also made big moves in strengthening their fullback positions. And in terms of City, they've signed Reinders, Ryan Cherky, Ait-Nouri, and if anything, they have had probably the best window so far, because not only are these good signings, they've already had the time to gel together in the Club World Cup. We saw Ait-Nouri, for example, be a progressive fullback. We saw Cherky contribute to the offense of Man City, and they're already gelling well, so they're going to have that advantage coming into the season. Can Chelsea compete with that? I don't think they can yet. They have the talent, they have the depth, I think, to once again make the Champions League, despite the fact that they'll actually be playing in the Champions League this season rather than the Conference League, because they have that depth, but they're not at that level yet. I think they're a tournament team, as we saw in the Conference League, as we've seen in the Europa League in the past, and the Champions League in the past. I mean, this is the only team that has basically won every current international trophy with this Club World Cup and those 3 European competitions. But they are not built yet, I think, to play a 38-game Premier League season. The biggest key to Chelsea's victory, besides João Pedro and Cole Palmer in this game, for example, was Robert Sánchez. And he had an amazing game. But are you really telling me that Robert Sánchez is good enough, is solid enough to be the starting striker for a Premier League winning side? I don't think so, with all due respect. Now that brings me to my third takeaway, and that is Brazil deserves respect. And people have been saying this for a while now, but it's even more true at this point. Coming into this final, a lot of people said that Chelsea had the easier side of the bracket. They just had to face those weak Brazilian teams, while PSG had to beat all the European giants. And while I'm not trying to say that the Brazilian teams are on the same level as a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich, this match has shown that they are good enough to compete in the Club World Cup. I mean, we've seen this already, but the fact that Chelsea struggled against Palmeiras, barely made it through, they struggled to break down Fluminense, and from that, they were able to dominate PSG, a PSG squad that cruised through their quarterfinal and semifinal matchups against European giants. What does that say about how good these Brazilian squads are? I mean, just to take a letter view at these 4 teams, Palmeiras tops their group, Fluminense draws Dortmund in their groups, beats Inter Milan, and then beats Al Hilal. Botafogo beats PSG and held Atleti to just 1 goal despite Atletico Madrid having their backs against the wall. And Flamengo topped the group that included Chelsea, the eventual winners, before giving Bayern Munich a hell of a match that they arguably should have won. And we are even seeing this with the transfers. As you may or may not have known, Igor Jesus, who scored for Botafogo against PSG, has just been signed by Nottingham Forest. And when you're a striker from a club that not a lot of people in Europe are aware of, that means you're probably pretty good. He's outside of the age range from the sort of player that a big Europa League level team, might I remind you, tends to get. But that just shows that, you know what? There are gold mines here in the Brazilian league, in the Argentinian league, in South America, and just because they're not 21 or 19 or 22 or whatever, that doesn't mean that they can't bring quality to your team. And within the youngsters, we're seeing this as well, obviously. Estiviao just joined Chelsea, João Pedro came out of Fluminense himself, and Real Madrid just signed Franco Mastratuano. And yes, I know he's Argentinian, but this is my video, and we're going to casually ignore that for the sake of the narrative, okay? Now, on to the next point, and I think that is that PSG have finally been found out. This team destroyed Inter Milan, destroyed Atletico Madrid, destroyed Bayern, well, questionable on destroyed, but beat Bayern, and destroyed Real Madrid. And they beat all 4 Premier League teams in the Champions League this year in the road to that final. It was a historic trouble season for them, and I think the closest that they were to being quote-unquote found out before this in this year was when Aston Villa, 5-1 down on aggregate, manages to break the system, I think in a very similar way actually to how Chelsea does, scores 3 goals unanswered. But you know what? PSG pull through. In the dying minutes, William Pacho makes a goal line clearance, the defense pulls through, and they get a win. But Chelsea have just shown that this team, as goated as they have seen, is not infallible. There is a way to beat them. And with the tactics that they employed in this match, PSG didn't adapt. There was no plan B by Luis Enrique. He just played the system that he always plays. And while I'm not saying that Lucho should resign and that PSG need to find a new manager yet, he needs at some point to develop a plan B with the squad. Because Chelsea have just laid bare, this is the blueprint to defeat PSG. Hey, every team in Europe that might face PSG in the Champions League this year, this is the strategy. Other teams are paying attention. They are going to notice this. So now the prerogative is on PSG to adapt and play a different style. Luis Enrique has not shown that he's able to do it yet. Let's see if he does next season. But that is definitely a cause for concern for me with this Paris Saint-Germain team. And that leads me to my final takeaway from this match. And that is that PSG, they don't have a leader. They have a captain, Marquinhos, but they don't have a leader. In the previous year, they got rid of Mbappe, which I think, to be fair, was the right decision. His ego really brought down the PSG squad, where he was not willing to track back and play within Enrique's system, despite the fact that Enrique kept encouraging him to do so. And with that, it got rid of the overconfidence the team had. It got them to be more cohesive, and it got them to buy into Luis Enrique's system. And it's worked so far for them, pretty much up until this point, right? I mean, they play Enrique's system, the results work, and everything is good. But what happens when you stop winning? What happens when you actually go a goal down? Which might remind you, in the Champions League, PSG never conceded the first goal in any round of the knockouts. In the Club World Cup, this only happened twice, against Botafogo and in this match. It's quite interesting to me that PSG has never been able to, in this season, in an actual important match, before someone pulls up some like random League 1 match against, I don't know, Rennes or whatever, in no important match has PSG gone a goal down and been able to come back. Because while they have now the tactics to be the best team in the world, and arguably still are the best team in the world, what they don't have is that natural leader. You need someone to be able to bail you out, whether it is Kylian Mbappe, whether it's an Erling Haaland, whether it's Ronaldo, a Messi, even a Cole Palmer. Who is that for PSG? Because we haven't seen it so far. It's clearly not Marquinhos. I don't think it's Donnarumma yet. Dembele doesn't have the mentality to do so. We haven't seen João Neves or Vitinha step up when the going gets tough. So who is it? They need to figure this out. Now, obviously, PSG are a young club. They're going to have time. This is not probably the most pressing issue, but it does show a sort of mental weakness that I think hasn't been talked enough about this PSG squad, because this hasn't really had to come up so far this season. But just to be clear, they are susceptible to pressure, clearly, and that is going to be an issue that PSG are going to have to fix at some point, either by getting a new transfer, either by opting Neves, Vitinha, whoever it is, to be that guy. But for now, I think that is probably the biggest issue outside of that plan B thing, the lack of a plan B thing that PSG have. So that concludes my 5 takeaways, my instant reaction, etc., etc. There's this Club World Cup final match. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Tell me, I guess, just some general feedback you have for the instant reaction format that we're starting today. And yeah, see ya.